Hello again, folks. Ronnie Turner here from the Prophecy Freak YouTube channel. This week we've got an interview with L.A. Marzulli on SkyWatch TV covering his Days of Chaos work that he's done lately. That includes part of what's in Watchers 9, but talking mainly about the chaos that we're seeing in the Middle East and how that ties into biblical prophecy and what he feels like we might be looking at in the very near future. You just kind of see things unraveling and expect any morning now to wake up and hear about an outbreak of war. So he touches on that and also how he feels like that's tied to the supernatural. I felt like this is really good information. It touches on the biblical fact of the fallen angels and how they're interacting with humans, and then how they're going to return in the days of tribulation, as is talked about in the book of Revelation. So I want you guys to check us out, and we'll see what you think.
First of all, look at the Arab Spring. And who could have imagined the Arab Spring happening? No one saw it. I mean, I've sat down with Dan Gordon, who's a captain in the IDF in reserves, and he's been in countless, wars over there and knows the terrain. And he said, Shin Bet, IDF, our intel, no intel saw the Arab Spring, happening. And, one guy basically set himself on fire in Tunisia, and it just, because of social media, that went all through the Middle East, and it's still going on. And it created the tension that we see, where these old regimes just came toppling down. Think of Hosni Mubarak, which then was replaced by Muslim Brotherhood candidate Mohammed Morsi, who was now basically facing execution. So the whole place is in complete chaos. What this does, Israel, which of course, and this is a whole can of worms, and it's really a 3-hour discussion, but part of the church are supersessionistic, in other words, replacement theology. So you look at Israel, well, it doesn't really mean anything, you're not supposed to be there. The church has inherited all the promises of the Bible. Of course, I don't believe that.
Right.
Israel is back in the homeland, which fulfills ancient prophecies, specifically Amos 9, just to name one. She now is surrounded by those who pose a direct existential threat to her. When you look at Hezbollah in the north with 150,000 rockets, Hamas, which continues to build these underground tunnels, why can't we all get along? But they can't. And all they think about is destroying Israel. And now you've got ISIS, which of course I believe was a CIA operation that went rogue. They trained these guys, they equipped these guys. That's why we see all the Toyotas and all the modern equipment.
Oh, clearly it was. I mean, the whole Benghazi episode where it led to the deaths of the 4 Americans, including our ambassador there. They were there in Benghazi taking weapons that had been stashed by Gaddafi for his military and shipping them to Syria to get to the rebels.
That's
and the Defense Intelligence Agency warned the White House, stop this or we're going to create an independent Islamic state that will destabilize Syria and Iraq. Judicial Watch, the government watchdog group, found that memo. Yeah, so it's clear that our hands are on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which leads back to the question about the spiritual, the supernatural component behind this. We know from the book of Daniel that there are spirits over the nations. We also see that if you, I think, rightly interpret Deuteronomy 32, verses 8 and 9, God set the borders of the nations according to the number of the sons of God. So, geopolitically, it doesn't make any sense for us to be throwing gasoline onto a smoldering fire, which the Middle East has been for, since the time of King Saul and before. Why would we do that? It only makes sense if you interpret it through a supernatural lens.
Just recently, last week, Iran is selling their oil and trading their oil to European nations in euros. You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's what got Saddam locked. So the Russians are backing the Shia branch of Islam, which is the Shia crescent, which goes from Iran into Syria, over to Lebanon, and now down into Yemen. And the Western powers are backing the Saudis and their allies. So it's Sunni against Shia. We're looking at the nascent beginnings of World War III, in my opinion. I mean, it's just... And the supernatural component is this, and this is from the Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, the book. The current political landscape is in direct correlation to supernatural events that happened in some cases millennia ago. And what I mean by that is that Islam is based on the supernatural events that Muhammad allegedly received, and that's a 3-hour discussion. And in the West, we believe, as Christians, in the supernatural. That's why we celebrate Christmas and Easter, even though a lot of people take offense at that, but that's what we celebrate here. That's a part of our culture. And those are based on supernatural events. So what's really going on, no one ever talks about this, is that these supernatural events have coalesced, and Islam is being driven by that set of supernatural events which became Islam and the Quran. And we can tap dance around all this all we want and say that Islam is a religion of peace, but we see over and over and over again through. So which is the true Islam? Is it the Sunni branch? Is it the Shia?
Which branch of Islam within those? You get 5 are Shia,
exactly,
12 are Shia,
exactly.
7 are Shia. Yeah.
So where is the religion of peace? But what we see over and over again is radical jihad everywhere, all over the planet, and this is creating chaos. And of course, one more thing on this. People are always, some people write me, blood moons LA, nothing happened. Shemitah, nothing happened. Look at the stock market right now.
Yeah.
Look at what's going on in the gold and silver, the future markets. Look at the fact that 1 million so-called refugees poured into Europe. That is an unprecedented event. I mean, the Battle of Tours, Charles Martel and the gates of Vienna are all gone. I mean, they just let them in. And now the Europeans are realizing, oh my gosh, we've just given the country away. And so there's pushback finally.
Right.
But that's huge.
Yeah,
that's
we're seeing a rise in nationalism among some of the Scandinavian countries that we haven't seen in a long time.
Sweden, for one, sure.
Sweden has promised to send back half of the refugees that they've taken in. But you've got a group in Finland now calling itself the Sons of Odin, dressing in black leather masks and going around and beating up refugees, or asylum seekers, maybe a better term. So yes, we're seeing that happening there. But at the same time, we've got an Assistant Secretary of State at a conference on the Syria problem in London last week, as we record this, saying that we need to. President Obama is going to take in more, and we're going to raise the number.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're opening the door to a problem. There are Christians now. And maybe we should address this, because we as Christians are told that we should give our, if somebody takes our cloak, we should give them, our second cloak, or we should open our hearts, our homes, be charitable, because in so doing we may entertain angels unawares. We've had this conversation with Carl Gallups, with Colonel Bob McGinnis and others. How do we as Christians draw that line between being careful, prudent, protective of our families, and trying to fulfill the command of Christ to feed the homeless and the widowed and the orphaned?
That's a very complex question, and it's basically case by case. The problem is the ideology behind Islam. That's the core issue. The fact is that in Islam you're allowed to lie. If you're an Islamist, you can lie to the infidel. And when we look at the ideology there, it's not going to change. That's problematic. And unless that changes, unless there is reform, and there are Muslims who are saying we need to reform Islam, but their voice is not heard usually. So that's it's a very tenuous situation that we find ourselves in 2016.
Yeah, it kind of goes to prove how close the supernatural really is to the natural in all these geopolitical problems. Do you think it's a human nature problem, or a spiritual, or kind of both? Where do you see the percentages?
The heart of man is deceitfully wicked. I mean, we know that, and that's why we need a redeemer. I mean, recently in the last year, if I can digress just for a second, Father God has shown me, and it's very uncomfortable, some of the depths of my own depravity. And I just sit there and just, weep, fall to my face and go, there is a Redeemer, Jesus, God's own Son, blessed Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One. And that's what I cling to.
Amen.
So that basic sin nature, which a lot of people don't want to hear, but, that's who we are in the natural. And when we're born again by the Spirit of a living God, that begins to change. I believe on the DNA level, we begin to change. But yeah, there's a supernatural problem here. And Islam, I believe, is being driven supernaturally. Look, think about this. The Prince of Persia has never been deposed.
No.
Right.
Never. He still rules in that area. Where's the hotbed on the planet right now? Hello.
Yeah.
Right where the Prince of Persia is seated. I mean, you look at Iraq, you look at Syria, people say, well, victory in Iraq, nonsense. But every 10 to 14 days, another suicide bomber blows 60, 80, 120 people, and countless others are injured and some, maimed for life. And this is ongoing in the Middle East. I mean, it is a crazy place right now, and it's not getting any better. And I believe that it's being driven supernaturally.
That's the only thing that makes any sense. Because, again, from a rational perspective, can't we all just get along?
Yeah, no kidding.
What are we doing here?
Most people of any nation, creed, color would want nothing more than to be able to raise their children, their grandchildren in peace. But there is a spirit that just will not let that rest, will not let that happen.
Why is it that the mother of a suicide bomber is proud that her son is going to blow himself up and become a martyr? See, this is, American people don't understand. I've got films of this and I clips of it and I show it in my presentations when I'm on the road. But, Mohammed Morsi, when he's running for president of Egypt in Tahrir Square, thousands, tens of thousands of people are gathered. And this very fiery Imam Higazi, Safwat Higazi, is standing up and he's yelling and screaming in a very Hitler-esque type way. And the crowd begins to chant, "To Jerusalem we go, martyrs in the millions." I mean, if American people saw that, you've got to realize that we're not going to change that ideology. It's not going to go away, all of a sudden overnight and, Israel's okay. No, Safwat Higazi has stated that we will pray in Jerusalem, or die as martyrs, at its gates. I mean, that's basically, and we're not going to change that. And that's what the West never sees. And of course, people like me who state that, somehow I'm an Islamophobe. Well, hello, this is like Chamberlain and his silly little white paper. Hitler's not going to invade anything. He's promised me peace, and 2 weeks later, I'm just exaggerating, but a short while later, Hitler goes into Poland and the rest is history, 50 million people. So we're calling it out now. This is really dangerous.
I want to talk more about your work on the trail of the Nephilim and the UFO in our next discussion. But I think you raised a really good point, Josh, in the supernatural causes behind the geopolitical turmoil, the days of chaos that we see around us. Is there a correlation, or how does this correlate to reports of supernatural activity around the world? Do we see more happening from the Middle East because of what's happening there? I mean, is there any type of evidence that the spirit realm is more active in areas where there's a lot of blood being shed?
Here's something interesting, and I'll flip it. This is a good report. And we interviewed this pastor. We don't know his real name. In fact, Bill Salas was able to hook us up with this guy. And the interview is in Watchers 9, Days of Chaos. And he talks about that the number one threat to the mullahs in Iran is Christianity, because that changes it flips everyone's ideology, and the mullahs don't like that. So, and in Iran, there's out places where, desert and very barren, very, very stark landscape, and there's elderly man, goat herder, one-room hut, dirt floor, little fire thing, and one night he hears this knock on the door, and he opens the door, and there's this man in a white robe who's kind of glowing. And then lets him in. They sit down, and he probably serves tea or whatever. They begin to talk, and the man goes, "I want you to dictate something. Take this down." So he gets paper and pencil or whatever, and he begins to write in Farsi. And this goes on for a while, and he finally falls asleep. He wakes up, the man is gone. Next night, knock on the door. Guess who? There's the glowing stranger. And he lets him in again, and this continues for a while. And so word gets back to this pastor that this guy had a visitation. And we're like on the ends of our seats. Where's this going? It's like, oh my gosh, right from the front lines. So this pastor, gets in a Jeep or whatever and drives out in the middle of nowhere and greets this guy, and he goes, "I don't know what this is," and he puts down a stack of paper, and he begins to read, and it's the Gospel of John in Farsi.
Wow.
Really? Wow. The Gospel of John in Farsi.
That's amazing.
And what I want to get, obviously, is a copy of that.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That was just one of the stories that we heard. So in the midst of all this chaos, Yeshua, Jesus, is appearing to people and giving them salvation because look, I was just talking about Muslims and jihad, and I get that. They're human beings. They are made in the image and likeness of God.
Amen.
And as a Christian, I look at them first as you're made in the image like just like I am. You need to know who your creator is. And I mean, I've dialogued with some Muslims, but when they come at me with, well, the Bible is the work of Satan, if I give them that, then there's no place to go. So meanwhile, Muslims are converting to Christianity throughout places like Iran, where if you do that, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Literally, that's a death sentence.
It's a really good way to look at it because, we're a lot of times in Christianity, we find ourselves fighting against one another. If we can,
All too often.
yeah, if we can look at someone else, say from the Islamic religion, or as a prisoner of war instead of the enemy,
There you go.
then we can see who our true enemy is. Ephesians 6.
Yeah. And again,
And that's the supernatural dynamic that's driving all this.
Yeah.
I agree.
remarkable that the Holy Spirit, in the form of Jesus appearing to Muslims, and this is not happening just in Iran, but there are also reports coming from Egypt as well, other places that are essentially behind enemy lines where evangelists can't go. Perhaps the Holy Spirit is appearing instead, and this is.
I love stuff like that. I mean, I really do.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, and that's the good news. And with just about a minute, with all of this chaos around the world, where do we find a ray of hope?
Well, the ray of hope is this. Yeshua warns us. Remember, he's quoting from the Tanakh when he says this. I mean, that's what he's saying. He's saying there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, and troublesome times. Men faithful and fearful is coming upon the earth. That's all doom and gloom. L.A., please. I'm ready to shoot myself. But the bottom line is he says this. When you see these things, go out and build a concrete bunker and hunker down with your AK-47. He doesn't say that. He says, when you see these things begin to happen, look up. Because I'm coming back, I'm returning, your redemption draws nigh. That's our hope. It should light a fire within us. It should. We go, my gosh, we're in the time of the signs. This is it. It's all happening right in front of us. It should get us excited. It should make us like Billy Graham. You're at the gas pump and you're talking about Jesus, because people need to hear that these are the birth pangs. We are in the window of time that's leading up, and the good news is his return. It has to happen soon, because the whole transhumanistic thing.
Yep.
If he doesn't come back soon, there's nothing human to come back to.
Right.
So he's got to come soon. The signs are all here. They're firing on all 8 cylinders. That's the message of hope. We're in the midst of a cosmic regime change.
Next, we've got an update from Gonz Shimora and his YouTube channel, Face Like the Sun. And he's talking about Hillary Clinton's comments and promise to the voters to disclose this whole UFO alien phenomena, at least as far as what our government knows about it. So I don't know if that's just a campaign ploy to get votes, or if she's serious and really wants to get to the bottom of things. But Gonz includes an interview that I thought was very interesting to see Hillary Clinton, how she responds and what she says she's wanting to do to this end. So I want you guys to check this out as well.
Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. A couple months ago, I made a video called Hillary's Pledge for UFO Disclosure. Hillary Clinton claims she will get to the bottom of UFOs. Well, she was just on the Jimmy Kimmel Show again last week, and she confirmed some of those sentiments. Check this out.
That's right.
When we had your husband, President Clinton, on this show, he said, I asked him about UFOs in Area 51, and if he looked in, because if I was president, that's the first thing I do. I go right into those files and see what was going on.
Right.
And he said that he did do that.
Yes.
And that he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon, really?
Yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible. If there's nothing there, let's tell people there's nothing there.
What if there is something there?
Well, if there is something there, unless it's a threat to national security, I think we ought to share it with the public.
Well, what if everybody's all hopped up on medical marijuana and everybody gets paranoid? I would love it.
That's why I want more research.
If you share it with me, I'll decide what is the best course of action. I really have my ear to the ground.
Well, I'm more than happy.
Now, there's some history with Hillary Clinton and the UFO ET phenomenon. Back in 1993, Lawrence Rockefeller and attorney Henry Diamond met with White House science advisor John Gibbons to lobby the government to release secret UFO files. And then in 1995, Hillary Clinton visited the Lawrence Rockefeller JY Ranch, where, again, he was actively involved in bringing the ET UFO issue to the White House. There are pictures of this that were released in 2006 in the Freedom of Information Act, when over 1,000 pages of UFO documents was released by the science advisor to the president in the Clinton White House as part of this Rockefeller UFO initiative. Now, in many of these documents, again, the First Lady at the time is seen walking with Rockefeller holding a book that was later discovered to be a book called Are We Alone? Philosophical Implications of Discovery of ET Life by renowned physicist and cosmologist and astrobiologist Dr. Paul Davies. Davies is part of the SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, Post-Detection Task Group. And in 2009, November, he was one of the main speakers at the Pontifical Astrobiology Conference, which is basically the Vatican's arm when they discussed the ET possibility. And of course, this has all the connections to the Lucifer Telescope in Arizona, where Davies is a co-director at Arizona State University in the Cosmology Initiative. And it ties into all the work that Chris Putnam and Tom Horton have done with Exo Vaticana. And so to see Hillary Clinton bring this up again, not just publicly, but then again on the Jimmy Kimmel show, nothing gets asked in these interviews, especially in these major public outlets, without some sort of consensus beforehand. So Jimmy Kimmel was probably briefed in asking questions about UFOs in conjunction to his interview with Bill Clinton from the past, and I think this is a topic that they've been planning to disseminate for some time now. In fact, in the documents, it's mentioned that not only did Hillary Clinton discuss the UFO and ET reality with Rockefeller and his staff, but that Hillary and her staff actually put together a letter and sent it to President Bill Clinton asking him to prepare the U.S. for disclosure. Now, this is all the backstory here. And so coming to 2016, 10 years after these documents were released and nearly 20 years since Hillary Clinton was seen talking to Lawrence Rockefeller at the Rockefeller JY Ranch, what does it all mean? And it ties into the whole debate here that's going on politically with the presidential campaign, who's going to win. Obviously, Hillary Clinton doesn't seem to be very popular right now. And I know some friends and stuff that have said that the reason why Trump is even in the mix is because he is part of the distraction to bring down the Republican Party so that Hillary can come and ascend to the presidential office. And perhaps that's part of the grand agenda. Who knows? In my opinion, Trump wasn't necessarily part of the agenda, but at the same time, he is being infiltrated in different ways. He has people that he is connected to who are part of the Trilateral Commission. So in some ways, he may not be part of the inner circle of the good old boys group, but he is being infiltrated in other ways from the powers that be, so to speak. But in any case, this topic does bring up large questions about where this is all headed and how this topic of UFO and disclosure will be disseminated into the public. Propaganda through entertainment media has been there for decades now, and there are various theories surrounding this topic. And there are wild theories that they're all reptilians, all the way down to it's all part of a deception. And in my opinion, I think they have been influenced by these fallen angels and demonic entities who are behind all this and who want to somehow appear not just in a sort of grand way, but also in conjunction with the world system so that they are presented as our creators, so to speak. And that's what the ancient alien agenda is all about. And that's what the Sumerian context of our cosmology has been promoting for some time now, especially in the last few decades. And so I think it's all tied into that and the great deception that will be coming upon us. If you actually go to Revelation 13 and read a few passages at the beginning here, you have the beast system, which some people think it's Rome, and that ties into this as well as this final global government. But it's interesting because it says the dragon gave the beast power and his throne and great authority. And is it possible that this dragon here is that ET deception? Because if you think about this passage here, it talks about the beast, it talks about all of its parts, the diadems, the horns, the blasphemous names on its head, and the various elements of being like a leopard, bear, and a mouth like a lion, and so on. And then saying here that the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast and they worshipped the dragon. Since the dragon is a separate entity, it's the one that upholds this beast, it would make sense that the dragon here could be in reference to this ET phenomenon. So it all ties in, but let me know what you think about why Hillary keeps bringing this topic up as part of her campaign. Is it just to bring attention, or is there something more to it? And given the history here, there's definitely an agenda behind this and a plan as part of the disclosure process, and I think it all relates back to the Great Deception personally. But let me know what you think. Hope you guys have an awesome day.